This podcast is dedicated to those who have found their way from fear to freedom and for those who are considering undertaking this amazing journey. This is the Courage to Be podcast, and I'm your host, Tanya Vasallo. Before we get into this episode, I want to share an amazing opportunity, my signature event, Increase Your Income and Impact, which is happening this November 7th through the 9th in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You will walk away from this 3-day in-person event shifting your mindset from not enough money to manifesting on the spot. You'll also learn how to get over your fears, own your worth, so that you can have a greater impact in the world. This event is life-transforming and already filling up. And don't take my word for it, just go to our site and listen to what participants are saying. I'm gifting you an 80% discounted ticket. All you have to do is leave me a rating and review on iTunes. Take a screenshot and email us at help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com and type event discount to claim your discounted ticket. You can also find that email in our show notes. I look forward to being your mentor and guide and transforming your life. See you in Santa Fe. Welcome back to the Courage to Be, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And today we have Penny Zenker with us. Welcome, Penny.
Hi, it's great to be here, Tanya.
I'm excited and looking forward to this conversation. Some of the things that I was reading, that one of the things that stood out that I want to start out here is that you're known as the Focusologist. Please share with us how you came up with this title and how you became the Focusologist. Like, what was your journey in getting here?
Right. Well, there's two parts to that. So the first part is when I was trying to, as I'm looking at how I'm going to present myself as a speaker on stage and what am I all about? Where's my unique thread? And looking back, it really came to always being reassessing and getting focused on what matters most, helping my clients get focused on what matters most when I'm growing my business or, giving someone advice, right? So I don't know, for me, that was the common theme. So I recognize that, but then I also recognize in this day and age with all the distractions that we have, despite the fact that I might be drawn to focus and because I am challenged with my own focus, right? I'm distracted very easily. I don't necessarily have a label or been tested, but I'm sure that if I was, I would have something. And today I think everybody has that challenge. So to me, a focusologist, and why I sort of came with this word, was that it's got to be a daily practice, right? Any ologist is someone who practices that distinction. So they practice. So the focusologist, the definition is the practice of controlling and directing our focus towards more positive, meaningful results.
That is so needed in this, like you said, in this day and age. I mean, because like you said, most of us could have labels, because there weren't labels when we were growing up, so, but if we were to go down that path, I'm sure we could find some type of label in one way or another. But even if you do consider yourself that like, no, I don't have ADHD or autism or, fill in the blank, with whatever sensory processing, any type of neurodivergent, label that you would want to put on it. But we have kind of been forced into this situation of technology, of distractions. How do we start getting more focused, Penny, and just living a life where we're not getting pulled in every single direction? Because in a way, I feel like it's not our fault. Like we fell into this trap, but how do we untangle ourselves out of it so that we can gain more of this focus? Like,
Totally.
How do you do it with your clients? I mean, you just brushed over it a little bit with daily practice, but what does that look like?
So there's a lot of questions in there. So let me just start out by saying that, I saw it on the internet. It must be true that we now have less attention span than the goldfish, right? So it's everyone. Like you said, this is a global issue. We are in a focus crisis. And I agree with you to say that it's not our fault, but it is within our control. And I think that is absolutely key because very often we blame it on everything that's happening around us, but we fail to take control of the things that we actually can. And so, it comes down to just being more intentional. So if you're setting a goal that you're going to work on something and something's important to you, then what do you do to set yourself up for success? Because you're going to be distracted, right? So let's start ahead of time. I have some different things that I teach people, but let's take what I call gatekeepers. I call them gatekeepers because if you've ever been in sales or know salespeople, is they're calling and trying to get the attention of the decision maker, and there's often someone in the middle that helps them get on the calendar or get through the phone, and that person is known as the gatekeeper. And that set a trigger for me where I'm like, we all need gatekeepers. You don't need to be a CEO to have a gatekeeper. So I went to do some research to find what were people using and what were some common categories and how could we break that down. So I broke it down into 3 categories. We can set rules for ourselves. That's one category. The second category is filters. And the third category is our environment. And when we pre-think about these things and set rules so that we don't have to get caught up in decision fatigue, that we've already decided, right? We've already decided, for instance, I want to lose weight. I've made some rules for myself that I'm not going to eat after 7 p.m. because that's where I start getting in the closet and eating the pretzels right? So no eating after 7 o'clock, brush my teeth, and that could be a filter, right? So because I do this, I don't like to eat after you have all that mint in your mouth or whatever, right? And in your environment, if you take the third pillar, what do you do to set up your environment for success? Well, you make sure that they're not on the counter, those pretzels or chips, they're not easily accessible, you're not seeing them, and that you have readily available water, like, if you can have your water right in front of you. So when you feel a little pang of hunger, you'll have a glass of water because it's right there, or you could have a tea or something like that, right? So it's really being able to pre-decide so that you've got those different things in place that support you to be successful, and they will block out distractions. These rules, these filters, and in our environment, they will help us to manage those distractions.
Those are such amazing tips, and I had never really thought of them. I mean, I've practiced a couple of them, like trying to shift the environment or these things, but I love how you just broke it down into the 3 pillars, the rules, the filters, and the environment. That is fabulous.
And we could see it as a rule of 3. If you do all 3, right? And that's where, yeah, we do a lot of these things, but we're not as intentional and purposeful about them. But if we intentionally set them up as a rule of 3, that I do these in these 3 areas, then we also avoid our challenge to hold ourselves accountable, right? Because we're not very good at holding ourselves accountable. So we've got a backup system and a backup system with each of these 3 pillars.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a great example with the food, with the eating. I think we can all identify with that. How do you manage with information overload in the sense of our phones? Like what are some of the
Sure.
rules, filters, and environment that you're using that you could give us as an example in
Sure.
that way?
Sure. So for instance, I have some rules around my phone where I don't look at my phone first thing in the morning, because what it does is it makes you immediately reactive. If you're looking at your phone and you're looking at emails and things like that, you're immediately getting into what's important to everyone else and not what's important to you. So I do not check my phone first thing in the morning, and I only check it at the top of the hour. So when I'm in a block of time where I'm working on something, I'm not checking my phone. My phone is away. Like my kids, they're like, "You never answer your phone." And I'm like, "I do. It's just that when I'm busy and I'm working on something, I'm not going to interrupt myself with the phone," right? So it's something we can pre-decide so that we know we're going to get back to it. You can also establish a system where if something will come through and ding if it's urgent, right? So you can set an urgency filter if it's really urgent, but most of the time they're false urgencies, and they just they just make us distracted and block out our productivity. So there's that. I mean, there's so many things you can do on the phone. You can turn the gray filter on as opposed to, so you can make your phone gray, and that reduces the dopamine hit that you get every time you go to your phone, which is really interesting, right? Because that's why we keep going to our phone, because we keep it's that reward center that keeps getting lit up and it creates an addiction. So that can help. And just also like when you're having dinner, things like that, rules to put things away. No, that could also be considered the environment. So no phones on the table, especially no phones face up, but no phones on the table. Then you don't, you're going to fight that urge. Also no phones right next to you in the car, right? And I did a test once to see how many times I wanted to pick up my phone between here and driving my kids to school. And it's literally a 5-minute ride, and I wanted to pick it up like 8 times. So, it's an addiction. And so it does take some time for us to make that work. We're going to feel uncomfortable. We're going to feel edgy because that's what it is when we're addicted to something and we're weaning ourselves off of it. But you will be so happy you did, right?
That is so beautifully said. And I love that you did that test. I'm going to do that test for myself too, because I do pride myself. I'm like, no, I'm pretty good on setting rules and, filters and I'm pretty good. I'd say I'm up there, but no one's perfect. And obviously
Right.
we're missing certain things. And I love that you did that test and to challenge ourselves, individually and then as a family, because I do have an 11-year-old and with my husband, and I do feel that the majority of us are addicted to our phones in one way or another. And we tend to blame the other ones in the family. At least that's how it
Yeah.
is in the family. They're like, oh, but you're always on the phone. I'm like, yeah, but I'm using it for work. It's just I'm not sitting in my office
Right.
and I'm doing emails at this moment. But they have a point, like maybe it's during certain times of it. And then I'm looking at my husband. I'm like, well, you're looking at the phone right when so we're all pointing out at when we're all not using the phone but these are great tips. I did not know about turning the phone on gray. That's a great
Yeah, you
idea.
could
I
Google
don't
grayscale.
grayscale.
Uh-huh.
I'm guessing it's on the where you're dimming it on the iPhone. Is that what you mean?
I don't remember where it is exactly. It's not you have to go into the settings. There's
Okay,
so
so I'll
many
look at that.
settings. It's not a direct one that you can do really quickly. I guess you can set it up for that if you wanted to. And it goes in waves, right? That's the challenge. It's like right now I'm in the middle of a book launch. And so I'm on my phone all the time, checking and responding. And I find actually, and I've had to be on more social media sites than I'm normally on and more active on all of those. And even though I have a team that supports me, it's completely overwhelming. I don't know how people do this on a regular basis. Like, as soon as my book launch is over, I'm going to have to like cut it back because it's too much for me. It's really overwhelming.
It's just too much stimulation. I hear you with
Yeah.
that. I've been off of social, like I have had my team post things, but I've been off for, I want to say 3 months now since the summer because I went back home for six
Yeah.
weeks in Spain
Oh,
and I'm
nice.
like, you feel it, you feel it on the brain. So when you did this test, and you realize like, oh my God, I am looking at the phone more than I thought. And you are the focusologist, like you are aware of this and you know these things. How long would you estimate for us listeners that it could take us if we start putting these environment, like setting up the rules, the filters, the environment, that we can start seeing some change?
I mean, people can see change right away. I mean, the first thing is to become a professional noticer. Like I did, just do a test. Do a test and see how uncomfortable does it make you when you put your phone in your drawer or in the other room while you're working. How uncomfortable does it make you? Okay, it makes you pretty uncomfortable because you want to check it. So, just notice at first. I think it's easing into it and then notice what you can do to make it a little bit easier. If you just take one little thing that might be the biggest thing for you, so maybe safety, maybe the car is the best place, right? So that we can save other people's lives, since whatever the current statistic is, there are people dying every day simply because of the distraction from people being on their phones. So just do that. Start in one area. And then once you conquer that, you're also going to see a ripple effect. As you start to be able to leave the phone for the 10 minutes that you're in the car, or engage in the conversation that you're in, even if you're not driving, right? Help the driver, talk to them, use that opportunity to connect with your kids. Some of the best conversations that I've had with my kids are in the car. So start there and you'll see the ripple effect. So I think that if you just start, you're going to see progress. I also want to just add one more thing. As you said, because I'm the focusologist, I'm just like everybody else. is I have to practice this on a daily basis, and I'm constantly working at it.
Thanks for making that emphasis, because I think sometimes we have these amazing experts like yourself, on the podcast, and we put you guys up on, like on a pedestal, like, oh, they have it all together. Like it's easy for her to talk about that, but I can't. So I really do appreciate you, Penny, just sharing that you're human, you're doing it too, and progress versus perfection, right?
Totally. I was a single mom for how many years? So 15 years. I was divorced and single since my kids were 1 and 3. So, and they just went off, my last one just went off to college. So, and juggling my own business and my parents, my mother's getting older. So we all have that, right? And we have to give ourselves a break. That we all have human nature where we get triggered by certain people and certain things, especially when we're not sleeping or we're. So I invite everyone to become a focusologist. That doesn't make you an expert. It makes you someone who's committed to the practice. I think that's what's important, is that when we think of a doctor who's a urologist or whatever, right? They're an expert in that space, but it just means someone who studies it. That's all it means, right? So why don't we all just become, right? Invite ourselves, give ourselves permission to be a focusologist so that we are committed to the practice. That's all. I'm committed to the practice. I'm not perfect. I'm an expert in some areas and some things, and in others, we're all a work in progress.
I love it. I am committed to the practice with you. Thank you for that. We're going to take a quick pause, Penny, and we'll be right back. I want to share an amazing opportunity with you. My signature event, Increase Your Income and Impact, which is happening this November 7th through the 9th in person in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You will walk away from these 3 days shifting your mindset from not enough money to manifesting on the spot. You'll also learn how to get over your fears and unworthiness so that you can have a greater impact on the world. These in-person events are life transforming. Just listen to what one of our participants has to say.
Hi, I'm Ricky Quintana with Hunar's Fair Trade, and I decided to come back to experience I think it's my 4th retreat now with Tanya, because I've worked with her before and I knew that I would get amazing insights. And the most amazing thing I got out of this retreat this time was realizing that I was defining success for my business as a profit in terms of generally accepted accounting principles. And I was completely discounting the amazing success I've had in all the other aspects of my business. And I can't wait to work with Tanya on her new full-year program to make this happen in a very short period of time.
If you found this inspiring, if you'd like to join us in Santa Fe, New Mexico this November, I'm gifting you an 80% discounted ticket. All you have to do is leave me a rating and a review on iTunes. Take a screenshot and email us at help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com and type in event discount to claim your discounted ticket. You can find that email in our show notes as well as the website to our event. I look forward to being your mentor and guide to transform your life. See you in Santa Fe. Thank you. So we were talking about just being committed to staying focused, to becoming aware, and just practicing this. But I want to pivot a little bit. I mean, it's connected in some way. I know that you have a TED Talk that's called The Energy of Thought that's had over 1 million views. And I want to talk a little bit about the energy of thought, because I thought that was fascinating too. And because we are focusing, on where our attention, that we do have to pay attention to what our thoughts are. So talk to me about your TED Talks, about this particular subject, the energy of thought.
Sure.
How did that come about?
In my mind, it's all connected, because it is the energy of our thought that determines where we focus. So, it's the energy of our thought that determines the words that we select, that determine, right? And those words have energy, direction, right? Intensity. In my TEDx, I talk about a story where Tony Robbins meets Nelson Mandela. And, and he says, oh, Tony Robbins says to Nelson Mandela, how did you survive all of those years? Right. And Nelson Mandela is a great example of the energy of thought. He said, Tony, I didn't survive. I prepared. Now, there's a different energy in those two words, survival and prepared, right? And it comes from the energy of one's thought. What is the meaning that he gave his incarceration? And that anyone else would be, be in survival mode, be angry, feel like they were wronged and aggressive, right? And survival is a heavy, intense, type of energy, but preparation is very cool and calm and collective, right? It's a very different energy. So just that can help us to understand that when we choose the meaning of what this particular event means, that's going to determine how we interact with it. And that choice comes with an energy, and then it creates those words that we use. So in my TEDx, I talk about sort of 4 different areas that can help you, direct the energy of your thoughts so that you're more conscious of it, you're more purposeful of how you're using your language and how you're interacting with that energy.
What are the 4 areas? Now you got me curious. You left me with the cliffhanger there.
All right. All right. Well, number 1 is purpose, right? When we get outside of ourselves and connect to a higher purpose, that really changes the energy. It gets us out of our ego. It gets us away from insecurities and self-doubt and those types of things. And we're working towards the greater good, right? We're on the Courageous podcast, right? So that's where we find the most courage, is when we step out of ourselves. And so it's that stepping into that energy that shifts the way that we see the world, the way that we interact with it, and the choices we make, the words that we use, etc. So that's number 1, is purpose. So number 2 is self-talk. It comes to understanding those words that we're using, recognizing when it comes out of our mouth. Like lately, my head is everywhere and I hear myself saying, I don't have the time. And that is a terrible excuse and a terrible thing to say, because I'm blaming time, right? It's that my priorities aren't clear and I'm allowing myself to be pulled in all different directions. So I have to listen to the words that I'm using. I was working with someone who was using words like, this is horrific. Well, wow, that is an intense, we need to change the intensity of that so that you can deal with the situation better. Because if you see it as horrific, you're going to deal with it differently than if you feel that this is complicated or challenging, difficult, right? It changes the way you look at it and the way you approach it. So self-talk is really important. Our physiology is hugely important, right? Our body and our mind are connected. So we can use our body to change our energy. We all know, like, there's a time of the day where you just feel like, your body is telling you you're done, you're tired, but we sit there and then we push it through, right? And we're making mistakes, we're so unproductive. All you need to do is get up and take a little walk outside, and in just a few minutes, right, you change everything. Even just 60 seconds of breathing has proven in various different aspects that can shift you from out of stress and into sort of a more resourceful state, right? Just from 60 seconds of breathing. So physiology is huge. That means also drinking water, make sure you're getting your sleep and things like that set you up for success. And then the last one is focus, is that intention of where you're putting that energy, right? And really then being clear what you want to achieve in the long term. So focus isn't just about attention short term. It's also about having that direction in sight. Intention and direction together, right, is what I call focus.
I love these. Thanks for the clarification with them. And to me, as I listen to you speak, Penny, you sound so intentional and observant, and that's what's made you so unique and become so productive. What are some of your daily practices? I mean, you did talk about starting your day without looking at the phone, which I love, and just being intentional versus reacting. So what are some of the other daily practices that you put together?
Sure. Well, I think it's important to know what you do and what you don't do, right? So like you said, I don't look at the phone. It's just as important to set those rules for what you don't do. I do go to the gym. I like to move my body in the morning. So that's really valuable to me to get into the right mindset. One of the things I like to do as an entrepreneur, and I think you can do this in any context, is I love to delegate first thing in the morning. I feel like I'm already doubling my productivity for the day if I'm able to delegate a couple of things. That means those things somebody else is going to be working on. And at the end of the day or the end of the week, I'm going to get that back as well as all the things that I do. So that brings me great joy to do that first thing in the morning. And I don't have a massive morning routine. All these people who like talk about I'm very purposeful about what I don't do. Like I don't watch the news. I don't go on social media. I don't do things that suck me into other people's priorities or that change my energy, right? The news for me is negative energy and I don't need that. And people are like, oh, how do you get your news? And I'm like, I'll get it somewhere. Like, it comes to you. You don't need to worry. Something catastrophic is happening in the world, you're going to hear about it. You don't need to watch the news to get it. So my philosophy is keep it simple. Don't add like 100 different things that you need to do. I eat a healthy breakfast, I take my greens, I set myself up for success.
These are great. And what I love is that you're mentioning focusing on the don'ts, because we tend to focus on like all these things we have to do, we have to do. So thank you for reflecting back on the importance on focusing on the don'ts as much as on the do's. It's like, okay, yes, I'm not doing these things. Like I don't do news, I don't do social, I don't get sucked into your energy if it's not good energy. Like if we don't, I'm sure that you're the type of person that if you're in conversation with someone and it didn't leave you more energized, that you're not going to repeat that interaction if possible. But what about, as you're saying, the don'ts and the do's? It just slipped my mind. I was going to ask you something with that. Oh, delegating. Yes. You said the first thing that you do in the morning is delegating. Are you delegating to team? Are you delegating to family? Are you delegating? Because I feel like this is such a hard topic for women, and especially women entrepreneurs. They start out as solopreneurs and they want to do everything. It's like, even in the household, it's like, oh, I cook dinner, I clean the house, I take care of my husband, I take the dogs out, I do all these things. And on top of that, I'm running a business. So I'm doing my accounting and I'm doing this. And please talk to me about delegating, Penny, to me and to everyone that's listening, because I know many of us struggle with this. I've become much better at delegating with the years, but I know that I still have other things that I could delegate, maybe on the
Right.
personal level. And I want to hear it from you since you love doing it so much. And that's the first thing you do in the morning. Please share.
Well, I think it's just about being, first thing is I'm a recovering perfectionist. Okay. And so we have to let go of being a perfectionist that, the kitchen is just so and everything is just so. I've given up. I don't let things bother me in that context. So, if you see a pile of dirty laundry or whatever, you have to do it, right? So you don't have to do it. You can put it somewhere so, and have a place for it so that, and if delegating would be to make sure that you tell your kids it's on the floor, move it, right? So, and my kids do their own laundry. Like from a very young age, I'm like, I'm not doing it, especially if their room is messy and clothes are all over the floor. And I said, I don't know what's clean and what's not. I was like, you're going to do it. It's really easy. I show them how to do it and they do it. So,
at what age do you start with them? Because I have an 11-year-old and I don't like laundry at all. And I'm always washing my husband, my daughter's clothes and drying them. I don't even dry my clothes. And then I'm like, why am I folding and washing their clothes? She's at an age where she can start doing it. So I love it. You're
oh my
channeling right
goodness.
now for me, Penny.
I was a single mom. So like we had a job wheel and everybody had jobs and including cleaning the toilets. Like, my kids did everything. There was a point where we had, as they became teenagers, where we had a problem to get those things done. But when they were younger, we played a game with it. Like, we'd play a game, who could match the socks faster. You get a jelly bean for every pair of socks that you do. Like, creativity, right? Is where but yeah, at 11, she should be able to do any task around the house. I delegate that they would cut the lawn. So delegation is, yes, at home, it's in your business, especially in your business. My new husband, he cooks. So, now that he's back to work a couple days a week, I suffer a little from my lunches because I have to make my own lunch. But, I'm very lucky. But that's the way you run a household, is that just like you run a business, everybody has a role. We all need to pitch in and help that things go. And, if you can afford it, you can have somebody come in from outside to help you clean, maybe every other week or even once a month, right? Can be helpful just to get the corners and the, places that maybe you're not so thorough or the kids aren't so thorough. But, is look for ways, like you said, you could be better. So it's great. Just sit down for a couple of minutes and say, what do I love to do? What am I, what's most important that I do so that, only I can do this, and look at what are the other things that need to be done that I don't like to do or that someone else could actually do. Start one at a time.
Yeah, and it's such a great reminder. I mean, because we can always delegate more or just revisit it, and just see like, oh, okay, my life's different now, because your life's not the same with your kids being gone, that are like your husband now, not being at home for lunches. So there's always going to be some tweaks, depending on what season of your life you're in. So that's great. I'm so curious that what happened at teenage years with the kids. How did you get them to start doing their things? Because I'm entering that age too. If you have any tips, Penny.
You have to be more tolerant because, I don't know. I mean, partially it probably came down to me not being as strict with them, I would guess that, but yeah, like my son, he's supposed to take out the trash. I'd remind him, he'd forget, but the important thing is if I would get angry with him, it's like he's not taking out intentionally. He's really just forgetting. He's got a lot on his plate and he's not creating good habits to remind himself or things like that. So I think that's the first thing, is not to get triggered and create because as soon as you yell at them, they're not going to do it. You know what I mean? Then they're going to rebel and say, I'm not doing it. So it's, a little bit of psychology. How can I help you to remember to do it? He goes, well, just remind me and I'll do it. And I said, okay, so you're not going to get angry if I remind you? He said, no. So I find that the best way to remind is not in person, but by text and by notes. I found that there's no energy there. Like, it doesn't create like a problem and then it gets done. So you might try that, since kids are on their phone all the time. And, you just have to, this is what I tell my husband as well. He gets more frustrated than I do. And I said, you just have to keep telling them. Don't do it for them. That's the worst thing that you can do.
Yeah.
Don't do it for them. Like my son, he has to do his own laundry. He doesn't do it. He doesn't have underwear. Like, not my problem. I've been wearing the same underwear for a week. I'm like, okay, do your laundry, So it's like that natural consequences to get them to do it, because it's like training a dog. I don't mean that kids are like dogs, but you know what I mean?
I get it.
Is if you're consistent, they will learn. But if they know that you're going to give them that treat, if they bark 5 or 6 times and eventually that treat's going to come, then they're going to do that.
Yeah.
So we just have to be consistent and hold ourselves back from getting upset about it.
I love it. Thank you for these tips. I'm going to definitely take them with me and I'll revisit the episode and listen to it. You mentioned before that you were a perfectionist, and I see this over and over. How did you overcome this, and letting go of the perfectionism?
How am I still overcoming this, right? These things are, again, like focus, these are things that we face on a regular basis, right? So maybe I don't have it in the household, but I have it in other areas where I'm challenged and want to make it the best it can be and probably stress myself out as much. So I think it's first just recognizing it. Is it creating you stress? Like, is it good enough? Or, and if we can define good enough ahead of time, that's really helpful. Like I said before, the pre-defining. If you can say, when I get to this point, that's going to be good enough, then that's going to help you to stop when you get to good enough. It depends on the context of so I was a micromanager. So that was part of my thing, is I wasn't able to delegate early on in my IT career not because I didn't trust people, but because I wanted to maintain the control. I felt like I was losing control. And so I would need to be involved in everything. And I just realized it was killing me. I was burning myself out, and it turned other people to be apathetic and not really care. So I found that the only way to help them to own their responsibilities and for me to own mine was to let go. And it's just like letting go of the phone. It's hard at first, and you have to trust. And maybe it's not going to be done as great as you would do it. Does it need to be? Right? What's the task that they're doing? If they're cutting the lawn, does it need to be perfect on all the edges? Or is it that big of a deal? Or if they're writing an email, maybe it is important depending on who it's going to, or you know what I mean? And how do you train them and give them templates and put in milestones so that you can check in and make sure that they're headed in the right direction without you taking it back? Like that was my typical thing, is I would just take it back and do it myself. And then there I am doing everything.
And that just leads you to burnout. I mean, we've all been there. Do you feel that? Because I can totally identify with the micromanagement and control is in a certain way like fears or insecurity and lack of trust.
But what's your question? So I think it
Yeah.
can
Do
be
you
lack
feel
of,
that? Yeah. That
it can
it's,
be lack of trust, but it can also be about control, right? So if you look at people working remotely now, and the managers that are having the most difficult time, who are the command and control type of manager, I'm going to tell you how you're going to do it, and I need to feel in control. They're not doing well. They're not managing their people well because their people don't want to be micromanaged, especially in this generation. Is that in my generation, people tolerated it, but they just don't tolerate it now. They'll just leave the company. They don't care. There's no, loyalty in that context, right? So they're out. And so we have to learn to trust, but learn to create the systems that you can still feel in control. Like I said, with setting milestones so that you don't have to wait until it's due with the client. You can meet a week beforehand and review it together, and then give them some, ask them some questions and give them some feedback so that they can complete those maybe last things that you need. But you always have to ask, is it important? Like, are we creating more work where work isn't necessary? And I think the pandemic was fantastic to help people to step back away from the work that we were doing and really recognize, like, look at how we cut through so much red tape so fast. Like, we don't need to have some of those controls in place. So why go back to them? It just doesn't make any sense.
yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, they say that with the pandemic, we advanced 5 years technologically. It forced us all to get on Zoom to do things differently that would have
Yeah.
taken us 5 years to be able to do those. So we're going to take a quick pause before we wrap up. I want to share an amazing opportunity with you. My signature event, Increase Your Income and Impact, which is happening this November 7th through the 9th in person in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You will walk away from these 3 days shifting your mindset from not enough money to manifesting on the spot. You'll also learn how to get over your fears and unworthiness so that you can have a greater impact in the world. These in-person events are life transforming. Just listen to what one of our participants have to say.
Hi, everyone. My name is Linda Myers, and I've known Tanya since the first time she did an event like this retreat. And I always found her, because it's important, that connection that I have with her, I always found her to be generously knowledgeable, talented, offering us strategies that we could implement when we go home. I've had my business for 30 years. I still learn from her. I love her sense of humor. I love the fun she incorporates into a group that is positive and loving. That's the kind of people she attracts to her retreats. I highly recommend that you come to Tanya's events, because she will help you clarify where you can take your business and move it forward to wherever you want it to go.
If you found this inspiring, if you'd like to join us in Santa Fe, New Mexico this November, I'm gifting you an 80% discounted ticket. All you have to do is leave me a rating and a review on iTunes, take a screenshot, and email us at help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com and type in event discount to claim your discounted ticket. You can find that email in our show notes, as well as the website to our event. I look forward to being your mentor and guide to transform your life. See you in Santa Fe. As we come back, Penny, you have a book launching today, The Reset Mindset. Can you tell us about your book, please? How exciting, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it is very exciting. And really, it's all connected to everything we've been talking about. So the reset mindset is about dynamic reassessment, that we can't afford to wait, to have longer learning cycles. Like, I compare in the book to the growth mindset, which talks about effort and persistence and learning and growing. And when we're in that place, we're going to grow faster. And when we're in a fixed mindset, we are sticking to what we know. We're not adaptable, and we're not growing. But the reset mindset is the next generation of the growth mindset. So whereas it's not about effort and persistence, it's about creating value as the core. And when we create value, we get to, in today's environment, to reassess more quickly, to shorten the learning cycle so that we're learning real time. So we're listening to the market, not in an annual market survey. That's too long. The market changes too much within the year. So we need to do like pulse surveys, like after somebody purchases, let's hear from them and hear what they liked and didn't like, or, hone in on maybe just one question. And it's that feedback that happens dynamically as they're purchasing that allows us to integrate that feedback immediately into the next iteration of something, right? So like Starbucks was really good at that. They would do these surveys and they would integrate people's suggestions. They wanted to have, a different type of drink, and they made suggestions. And so they would test things on the marketplace. And so it's that dynamic reassessment that keeps people relevant and current. And it also keeps us focused on what matters most and focused in the right direction. And that direction may shift, so that we're also shifting and pivoting more quickly because we have this way of thinking, this, mental model of the way that we think about things.
That's fabulous. And where can people find your book?
They can go to theresetmindset.net.
Okay, perfect. The resetmindset.net for anyone that's listening, not .com, the resetmindset.net. And is that where we can become part of your community too and learn a lot more?
Absolutely. So by buying the book in September only is when this is being offered, you can put the code into the purchase order number into the website there. And then you'll get access to my learning center with lots of other videos and some of the worksheets that go along with some of the things that I talked about here, like gatekeepers and a whole host of other things. So plus you'll get the audio and the PDF along with that.
That is fabulous. And we're going to have an extra little bonus teaching for our private podcasting clients too. So I'm looking forward to that, Penny, with your teachings, because you are so knowledgeable. I appreciate the way you discern information and put it out there. Like you simplify it. You do simplify it so that we can focus.
Well, I think that's part of simplify and amplify, right? That's part of being able to focus, is to simplify, and then you can amplify.
Thank you for that. That was awesome. And I have one more question that I like asking my guests, which is, what can our listeners do, or how can they be, or what can they do in order to live a life with more courage?
I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, and I'm going to hone back on that, is make the core of what you focus on value creation. That I think when you're looking to create value for others, for yourself and others, but coming from that point is, I think, that makes you more courageous, that it lets you step outside the box and be more resourceful because you're looking to create more value. It's such a wonderful open place to be when you're focused on creating value. So I would say that, and just give yourself permission also to reset again and again.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that. I will take that with me. Permission to reset. That is great. Thanks for being with us today, Penny. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
If you like this episode and you'd like to feel this kind of energy live and in person, I want to share with you about my upcoming event, Increase Your Income and Impact, which is happening November 7th through the 9th in person in Santa Fe, New Mexico. You will walk away from these 3 days shifting your mindset from not enough money to manifesting on the spot. You'll also learn how to get over your fears and unworthiness so that you can have a greater impact in the world. I'll gift you an 80% discounted ticket. All you have to do is leave me a rating and review on iTunes, take a screenshot, and email us at help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com and type in event discount to claim your discounted ticket. I look forward to being your mentor and guide to transform your life. See you in Santa Fe.